So I've cleared the UPSC Prelims 4 times, not by luck, but by decoding how the exam thinks. And now I teach only one subject, Indian Polity, full-time, all day and every day. Hi everyone, I'm Advocate Varun Dutt, and in this video, I'm going to give you a complete strategy to master Indian Polity for UPSC Prelims. From core concepts to Booklist, from PYQ hotspots to elimination hacks, and how to build both accuracy and confidence in tackling even the toughest of the questions. What I'm about to share isn't a recycled list of tips. This is a battle-tested strategy, born from the grind, refined through failures, and validated through success. Stay till the end and I'll share biggest mistakes most aspirants make with Laxmikanth and how you can avoid it. So we start with the first thing, why polity is a game changer. See, a few things you must understand about Indian polity when it comes to UPSC prelims. First, year after year, 15 to 20 questions have come directly from Indian polity. That is a big and significant number. These are high-yielding topics which, when you talk in terms of Indian polity, either you know the topic or you do not know it. There is no guesswork involved with respect to Indian polity. Thirdly, it's one of the most stable subjects when it comes to UPSC prelims syllabus. The subject remains relatively stagnant. There are just a few current affairs related updates, but that apart, the subject year after year remains same. So once you have done a thorough homework, thorough preparation, you are free to go for all your attempts. Then it is great for accuracy. See, especially in a negative marked exam, when you know a subject clearly and you do not have to delve around the areas and ponder too much about what are the different ways in which the question can be twisted, it is a big relief for you. Then finally and most importantly, it overlaps with your mains as well as interview. Both the questions of your mains exam as well as your interview based questions have a very high connection with your polity. Effectively, you are supposed to become an administrator. And as an administrator, what you do is run administration. And the structure of that administration is imbibed in Indian polity itself. Right? So, next thing is why most students struggle with polity despite studying Laxmikanth. See, most students, what they do is they treat Laxmikanth like a history book. They keep reading it, but they never really own it. Okay, there are a couple of things or a couple of blunders that they do. First of all, you've done a couple of readings and you are already overconfident about it, and this overconfidence leads to an under preparation. Okay. Secondly, blind reading of Laxmikanth without any specific retention framework often affects your results. Then most of the times they are focusing on facts, not on building the concepts instead. And then finally, no linkages are made to the current affairs with respect to that topic, nor any mock analysis is done to see what are the various dimensions related to that particular topic. Right? See, politics or polity for that matter is not about ratta or rote learning, rote memorization for that matter. It's about logic, language and a layered learning. For example, if you read Article 21, do you know the latest case law with respect to that? Do you know what is K. Puttaswamy case? How is this case connected with Article 21? Or for that matter, how is Maneka Gandhi case related with Article 21 or Article 14 or Article 19 for that matter? See, these connections are very relevant for helping you score marks in your polity questions in prelims, right? I'll take another example. See, if you revise DPSPs, do you know which of these DPSPs are enforceable over the fundamental rights and which of these DPSPs are not enforceable with respect to fundamental rights? These are the areas which you need to connect yourself if you want to really have a deeper understanding of Indian polity as well as to ensure that you score your marks in prelims. Okay, what the syllabus actually means. Okay. Let's break down what UPSC syllabus means when it says Indian polity and governance, constitution, political system, panchayati raj, public policy, rights issues, etc. This is a list of the topics that have been clear-cut given into the syllabus of Indian polity for UPSC prelims. Okay. See, what it essentially means is that the syllabus can be divided into two broad headings or two broad areas. There is the static core, which usually contains 70 to 80% of your syllabus as well as around 70% of your questions. Then there are certain dynamic elements which contain around 20% of your syllabus. So, if you look at constitution, if you look at fundamental rights, or for that matter DPSPs, parliament and state legislatures, union and state executive, or judiciary for that matter, amendment of the constitution, these particular topics, they deal with the static syllabus of the Indian polity, and things like what are the different policies that are being made by the union and state governments at various levels, what are the different acts that have been brought down in the recent future, what are major current amendments which have been proposed to be brought or are already brought down in the recent future, what are the major governance issues going on with respect to various constitutional provisions and their policy implementations and all. These all, they make the dynamic aspect. Okay, so your strategy, it must include a strong conceptual base as well as a dynamic current developments. If if you're done with both of them, then you will be thoroughly prepared with more than 70% of your polity. Okay, I'll take an example here. Let's see. See, this question is from 2024, which and says, which of the following statements are correct about the Constitution of India? The power of municipalities are given in part 9A of the Constitution. Second says, emergency provisions are given in part 8 of the Constitution. And part 3 says, provisions related to amendment of the Constitution are given in part 20 of the Constitution. And select the answer using the code given below. Now, more than answering this question, the primary thing here is that this question has straight up come from part. If you are thorough with article, schedule and parts, then it itself is more than enough for you to understand what this question is asking. This is a static polity based question. Okay, part 9A invariably deals with municipalities. Emergency provisions are not given in part 8 of the Constitution. Then provisions related to amendment are provided in 20. So and so on. So if you can collect these dots, you can prepare your prepared your polity static portion thoroughly. You can easily in less than a minute attempt this question. Okay. Let's take another question of 2025. Consider the following statements with respect to pardoning power of the president. Now see, if you have read the pardoning power, this question deals with the dynamic aspect or the functional aspect of the pardoning power of the president. Statement 1 says the exercise of this power by the president can be subjected to a limited judicial review. Now this goes a bit beyond what has been given in the Constitution. You have to see how exactly does that pardoning power work in reality. Second statement says the president can exercise this power without the advice of central government. Now, this again is with respect to the applicability of the pardoning power of the president and goes beyond the static part of our syllabus. And if you know the functional aspects of these core static subjects, then you can easily within 10 to 15 seconds attempt this question as well as solve it correctly. Right? In this particular question, the correct answer would be the first statement that exercise is subject to limited judicial review is a correct option. Second statement wherein president has a discretion with respect to pardoning power is wrong. He has to act on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Okay, with that, let's delve down to the foundation of my strategy, or rather the three pillars. My strategy, it's built on three pillars. Think of it as URA. It's called you understand, retain and apply. Okay, the first pillar is understand, or rather the soul behind the article or the rationale behind the provisions and policies, etc. of a particular constitutional provision. Okay, just what exactly were the lawmakers thinking when they made a particular constitutional provision, or they brought out a particular policy, or they decided to bring out a particular constitutional amendment and so on. Okay, see, what the concept of understand essentially involves is that you need to read the bare act language with context. जो भी आपके बेयर एक्ट के वर्डिंग्स लैंग्वेजेस हैं उसको आपको उनके कॉन्टेक्स्ट में पढ़ना पड़ेगा, एंड देन यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट इज द मीनिंग अंडरनीथ इट. फॉर एग्जांपल, इफ यू आर रीडिंग आर्टिकल 14, you need to not only understand what are the phrases and the words given. Does it only talk about right to equality or equal protection, equality before law or equal protection or law, or does it go beyond? Because it also deals with philosophy of the constitution. It also deals with what are the various dimensions with respect to equality, which the Supreme Court has in various decisions enshrined to be a part of Article 14. Or for that matter, the concept of intelligible differentia. How is a classification made within Article 14, premises of Article 14 itself, for classifying the various categories of people on whom a differentiation can be made on the basis of their class status. Okay. Let's look at this question here. Which of the following objectives is not embodied in the preamble? Liberty of thought, economic liberty, liberty of expression, and liberty of belief. There are 4 options given, and if you have read the language of the bare act, in this case, if you have read the language of the preamble, you can very easily and within 10 seconds attempt this question, because you would already be knowing what exactly is the demand of this question. Liberty of thought, belief, expression, faith and worship is clearly given in the preamble itself. So if you look at it, economic liberty is not given in the language of the preamble provided for in our constitution, and accordingly not relevant for the purposes of this question, and you automatically in less than 5 seconds can attempt this question. If you do not, then you will keep pondering over and over again, and there is a very high likelihood you will mess up this question. Okay. Then the second point with respect to understanding is you need to use simple comparisons. देखिए FR और DPSPs हैं, fundamental rights और DPSPs. You need to understand the comparison के okay, how are FR what are the provisions with respect to fundamental rights provided for in our constitution? How are they justiciable? How are they enforceable? How do they safeguard the liberties and rights of the citizenry of India? And how are DPSP positioned with respect to fundamental rights? What special provisions have been made with respect to the status and the position of the state when it comes to DPSP vis-a-vis when it comes to fundamental rights? Or for that matter, a comparative analysis of what is an ordinance and what is a bill. इनकी जो process of passage है, इनकी जो exact legal terminologies हैं, इनकी parliamentary processes हैं, इनका origin है, इनका executive power है इनके respect में, houses की functioning है. All these aspects you need to have in your mind on a comparative basis, so that you can look at the multifarious dimensions with respect to these keywords and these topics and prepare accordingly. Right? Then third is, you need to watch debates, cases and real life examples. Like Keshwanand Bharti case, it is one of the landmark judgments when it comes to amendment of the constitution and propounds the doctrine of basic structure. Similarly, there is case of SR Bombay, which lays the foundation, or rather, comprehensively elucidates federalism and the concept of federalism, and so on. You need to be thoroughly aware of these parliamentary debates, or for that matter, any arguments which are going on in news, any news articles. You need to connect yourself and as well as understand कि okay, ये किस article, किस constitutional provision या फिर किस particular polity के topic या sub topic से deal कर रहा है, so that you can have a thorough understanding of this whole concept. So the next pillar after that is retain, or rather how do we make it stick? Okay, but before that, one thing you must remember. Understanding is the base on which your retention works. If your understanding is not deep and comprehensive, retention is not going to give you that fruitful a result as you are expecting. Okay. So first, when it comes to retention, there has to be a daily 15-minute recap rule. When we talk in terms of recap rule, whatever you have studied yesterday, you have to revise it on the very next day. In fact, you do not only need to revise the topic, you even need to use things like mind maps to make a mental picture of the topic and its various dimensions, or you need to make article clusters. Articles को group में याद करिए, जैसे right to equality है, article 14 to 18 are involved in right to equality. You can remember all those articles in a group. Article 14 talks about right to equality. 15 and 16 they talk about specific instances of equality, as well as the exceptional circumstances wherein we can deviate from the strict notion of equality provided under Article 14. 17 and 18 are clear-cut examples of how the equality is enforced, and so on. आपने एक पूरे cluster की form में उस article को पकड़ के समझ लिया है, and that is going to help you enormously in preparing for your examination. Right? Then another article cluster which we can use is you can study a particular group of FR, and then in later stages you can go on for an even bigger cluster. Like you can add related Supreme Court cases with respect to it, related news articles with respect to it, or for that matter major constitutional amendments that have happened. What was the history of those constitutional amendments, or the changes or social improvements they were trying to bring, and so on. Okay, then there is something called revision rhythm. There has to be a particular revision rhythm in your preparation. You cannot just finish a topic once and think you are done with it. Next you are going to see it only before the exam. That is totally not going to work. You need to have a regular recurrence of your revision. I usually follow this 1-3 7-15 day rule. You study a topic, the very next day you take a recap of that topic or revise it. 3 days later you revise that topic again. 7 days later you again revise that topic, and then finally after 15 days we revise that topic once more, so that you have at least revised it 4 times before you know take a break from that topic or switch over to another topic for that matter. See, what we study today, we revise it tomorrow, then again after 3 days, then again after 7 days, and then again after 15 days. And while you revising, we use active recall method. That is, आपने जो पढ़ा है उसको next day जब आप revise कर रहे हैं, you don't use help of books or your notes. You just try to revise whatever, or try to recollect and revise whatever you have read in your mind itself. सिर्फ अपने माइंड को प्रोसेस करने दीजिए, उसने क्या क्या इंफॉर्मेशन ग्रैब करी है, क्या उसने उससे नॉलेज डिराइव करी है, एंड लेट इट ब्रिंग इट आउट. Only when you are failing, only when you're not able to recall correctly, that is when you take help of your notes, or for that matter your books or other materials. Until and unless that happens, you stick to the format wherein you're trying to use your own brain's understanding for the purposes of recall. Okay, then that apart, you have to use keywords. जो भी आपके मेजर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन आर्टिकल्स हैं उनके अंदर क्या कीवर्ड्स दिए हुए हैं. लाइक टेकिंग दिस आर्टिकल 14 एग्जांपल इटसेल्फ, इक्वालिटी बिफोर लॉ क्या होता है, ये कीवर्ड आपको दिमाग में रखना है. इक्वल प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ लॉ है, वो आपको दिमाग में रखना है. आर्टिकल 21 है, राइट टू लाइफ की बात करता है, राइट टू लिबर्टी की बात करता है. ये दोनों कीवर्ड्स आपके दिमाग में आर्टिकल 21 के बारे में सोचते ही आ जाने चाहिए. और फॉर दैट मैटर इक्वालिटी बिफोर लॉ और इक्वल प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ लॉ, इट शुड immediately hit your mind the moment you think about article 14, and so on. Okay, and then finally we have the third pillar, applying or mastering the art of application. देखिए, जब हम अपने आइडियाज की अंडरस्टैंडिंग और रिटेंशन को अप्लाई करने की बात आती है, यहां पे द बिगेस्ट thing that we need to do is we need to solve the PYQs or the previous year questions. But we do not only need to do PYQs as an exercise or a routine monotonous exercise. We need to do the solving of PYQs, but we do it with diagnosis. आपको options को पढ़ के deeply analyze करना है. You have to ask yourself, why this particular option has been given. It is not just a random exercise happening on part of all those coaching institutes who spend hours and hours preparing those questions as well as their options. They deliberately infuse a particular option in that particular question, and there is a rationale, there is a particular thing they want to bring out in your thinking and your understanding methodologies. That's why they have put those options out there. आप जब उन options को पढ़ते हैं, उनको observe करते हैं, you need to try to figure out ये option यहाँ क्यों दिया है, कोई दूसरा क्यों नहीं दिया है, कहां मुझसे गलती करवाना चाह रहे हैं, कौन सी गलती पकड़ना चाह रहे हैं, एंड सो ऑन. ओके, एंड देन यू नीड टू ट्रेन योरसेल्फ इन द एलिमिनेशन लॉजिक. बहुत रेलिवेंट है फॉर प्रीलिम्स पर्सपेक्टिव कि आपको सिर्फ पॉलिटी ही नहीं, इन योर एंटायर यूपीएससी प्रीलिम्स जर्नी यू नीड टू thoroughly understand the concept of elimination and how do you do it with logic. See, 50% of polity for prelims purpose is about logic rather than about memory. If you can learn how to eliminate the wrong options, the battle is already more than half done. Okay, then you have to analyze the trends of the question. See what topics UPSC loves and what it quietly skips. It is very, very relevant when it comes in understanding what should be your focus areas. Okay, topic wise strategy if we talk about, see, there are certain areas. If we look at the last 10-year questions of UPSC prelims from the question papers, you see 80% of the polity questions come from a significant or rather a defined set of areas, and they have constantly been rendering us question after question. So if you have prepared them thoroughly, you are bound to have a very significant advantage vis-a-vis any other student. For example, fundamental rights. When you're studying fundamental rights, what's the strategy that you're supposed to follow with respect to them? You have to link them with Supreme Court judgments, news with respect to those fundamental rights. For example, right to privacy है, right to privacy में आपको के पुट्टास्वामी का जजमेंट है. आर्टिकल 21 और right to privacy कैसे कनेक्टेड है. आर्टिकल 368 है, उसमें बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर की डॉक्ट्रिन कैसे इमर्ज हुई. केशवानंद भारती का जो केस था, व्हाट वाज द सिग्निफिकेंट और कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर सुप्रीम कोर्ट जजमेंट. कोई रीसेंट केस आया है, आपका नवतेज जौहर का केस है, या फिर कोई और मेजर केस लॉ आ रहा है जिसको आपको लगता है कि इट इज वेरी रेलिवेंट फॉर द पर्पसेस ऑफ आवर एग्जाम, बहुत न्यूज में चल रहा है वो मैटर, एंड सो ऑन. DPSPs versus fundamental rights के टॉपिक की अगर बात करें, you need to know कि okay, what are the major DPSPs, what are major fundamental rights, what are the areas where they both of these constitutional provisions or constitutional parts overlap with each other, where do they contradict with each other, who has a more supremacy, what are the various Supreme Court judgments wherein court has digressed from the normally established rule of primacy of fundamental rights over DPSPs, and so on. ओके, आर्टिकल नंबर्स कौन कौन से हैं? बहुत बार होता है कि आपके एग्जाम में सीधा सीधा आर्टिकल नंबर आ जा रहा है, या फिर इनका पार्ट पूछ ले रहे हैं आपसे, या फिर क्वेश्चन के देके उसमें पूछ रहे हैं कि विच ऑफ दिस फॉलोइंग इज नॉट अ डीपीएसपी और अ फंडामेंटल राइट, एंड सो ऑन. इमरजेंसी प्रोविजंस की बात करें तो इफ दैट टॉपिक कम्स इनटू हेड, यू हैव टू रिमेंबर द आर्टिकल्स. कौन कौन सी कंडीशंस है जहां पे इमरजेंसी रिलेटेड प्रोविजंस ट्रिगर होती हैं, यू नो कि 352 जो है उसकी इमरजेंसी जो है वो किस कारण से ट्रिगर हो रही है, फाइनेंशियल इमरजेंसी कैसे ट्रिगर हो रही है, व्हाट इज द रोल ऑफ प्रेसिडेंट और व्हाट इज द रोल ऑफ गवर्नर विद रिस्पेक्ट टू एन इमरजेंसी रिलेटेड सिचुएशन. ठीक है, एग्जांपल फाइनेंशियल इमरजेंसी आर्टिकल 360 में दी हुई है, कैसे पास होता है फाइनेंशियल इमरजेंसी का बिल, कितने टाइम में इसको रेटिफाई करना पड़ेगा पार्लियामेंट को, एक बार फाइनेंशियल इमरजेंसी इंपोज हो गई तो उसका क्या इंपैक्ट पड़ेगा स्टेट सेंटर रिलेशनशिप के ऊपर, एंड सो ऑन. पार्लियामेंट वर्सेस एग्जीक्यूटिव और पार्लियामेंट एंड एग्जीक्यूटिव की बात करें तो यू नीड टू प्रिपेयर डायग्राम्स और फ्लो चार्ट्स विद रिस्पेक्ट टू इट. सी, यूनियन पार्लियामेंट और स्टेट लेजिस्लेचर है या फिर यूनियन और स्टेट एग्जीक्यूटिव है, इन दोनों में बहुत सारी सिमिलैरिटीज हैं. Most of the provisions are almost similar. In fact, at times they are verbatim similar. सिर्फ आर्टिकल नंबर्स चेंज हो रहे हैं, बल्क स्ट्रक्चर, बल्क फंक्शनिंग प्रोसेसेस हैं वो दोनों सेम है. आप सेंट्रल लेजिस्लेचर, स्टेट लेजिस्लेचर में देखेंगे ऑर्डिनेंस मेकिंग पावर्स रफली सिमिलर है, बिल्स की जो पासिंग की प्रोसेसेस हैं वो सिमिलर है, जो स्ट्रक्चर्स हैं वो सेम है, उनके जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल फंक्शनरीज हैं वो सिमिलर हैं, उनकी पावर्स हैं वो मोस्टली सिमिलर हैं, एंड सो ऑन. यू नीड टू नो देम थ्रू डायग्राम्स. आप उनको कंसाइज शेप में याद करने की कोशिश करिए रादर देन बिल्डिंग लॉन्ग लेंथी नोट्स अबाउट देम. ओके, जैसे ऑर्डिनेंस है, ऑर्डिनेंस में भाई ऑर्डिनेंस की प्रोसेस क्या है, किस ग्राउंड पे ऑर्डिनेंस पास होता है, कब प्रेसिडेंट उसको पास कर सकता है, कितने टाइम तक फोर्स में रहेगा, सेंटर के लेवल पे क्या रहेगा, स्टेट लेवल पे क्या रहेगा, क्या गवर्नर सेंट्रल इस पे ऑर्डिनेंस पास कर सकता है कि नहीं कर सकता है, एंड सो ऑन. सिमिलरली अगर हम बिल्स की बात करें तो बिल्स की पैसेज प्रोसेस क्या होती है, व्हाट आर द 3 स्टेजेस ऑफ रीडिंग ऑफ अ बिल, व्हाट हैपेंस व्हेन देयर इज नो एग्रीमेंट बिटवीन द 2 हाउसेज ऑफ द बिल, व्हाट आर द डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ वीटोज दैट कैन बी एक्सरसाइज्ड विद रिस्पेक्ट टू अ बिल, और फॉर दैट मैटर जॉइंट सिटिंग का कंसेप्ट क्या है, एंड सो ऑन. जुडिशरी की अगर हम बात करते हैं तो जुडिशरी में द प्रोसेस ऑफ अपॉइंटमेंट ऑफ द सुप्रीम कोर्ट जजेस, हाउ इज द अपॉइंटमेंट ऑफ एड हॉक जजेस डन, हाउ इज द अपॉइंटमेंट ऑफ सिटिंग जजेस और रेगुलर जजेस फॉर दैट मैटर इज डन, क्या उनकी मिनिमम रिक्वायरमेंट्स हैं, क्या उनकी मेजर क्या कहते हैं कंडीशंस एंड क्वालिफिकेशंस हैं दैट दे मस्ट फुलफिल इन ऑर्डर फॉर इट टू फॉर देम टू बी अपॉइंटेड टू द पोस्ट. सुप्रीम कोर्ट हाई कोर्ट की पावर्स में क्या डिफरेंशिएशंस होती है, कहां कहां वो सिमिलर है, कहां का सुप्रीम कोर्ट का ज्यूरिसडिक्शन ज्यादा है, कहां हाई कोर्ट का ज्यूरिसडिक्शन ज्यादा है, जुडिशरी की इंडिपेंडेंस कैसे इंश्योर की जाती है, व्हाट आर द प्रोविजंस ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन वेयरइन जुडिशरी कैन एक्ट एज डिस्प्यूट सेटलमेंट अथॉरिटी बिटवीन सेंटर एंड स्टेट्स, और फॉर दैट मैटर वेरियस डिपार्टमेंट्स ऑफ द स्टेट एंड सेंटर स्टेट एंड द सिटीजंस फॉर दैट मैटर. ये सारे डायमेंशंस को आप एनकम्पास करते हुए इन टॉपिक्स को आप प्रिपेयर करते हैं. अमेंडमेंट्स है, व्हाट इज द अमेंडमेंट्स हम पढ़ते हैं कि जो फोकस होता है हम लोग का, मेजर अमेंडमेंट्स कौन कौन से हैं, अमेंडमेंट का प्रोसीजर क्या है हमारा, रीसेंट अमेंडमेंट कौन से हुए हैं, 101st क्या कहता है, जीएसटी में इसके जीएसटी के रिस्पेक्ट में 101st के प्रोविजंस क्या है, कौन कौन से कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के पार्ट्स को ये अफेक्ट करता है. इन सारी डायमेंशंस को हम क्विकली कवर करते हैं व्हेन वी प्रिपेयर फॉर दीज टॉपिक्स. देन फाइनली देयर इज कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडीज, इनके मेजर आर्टिकल्स क्या है, इनका स्ट्रक्चर क्या होता है, मेंबरशिप कैसी होती है, इनकी पावर्स क्या है, इनके फंक्शंस क्या है, रीसेंट कंट्रोवर्सीज कोई हो रही है तो क्या है, मेजर रिकमेंडेशंस क्या है, कोई रीसेंट पार्लियामेंट्री कमिटी इनके ऊपर एस्टैब्लिश हुई है तो व्हाट वर देयर मेजर रिकमेंडेशंस, एंड सो ऑन. इन टॉपिक्स को अगर आप ब्रॉडली समझेंगे तो ये मेजर हेड्स हैं. इन मेजर हेड्स को अगर आपने प्रिपेयर कर लिया एक बार deeply, then be assured more than 70% of your paper has been thoroughly prepared just by preparing these very topics itself. Okay, the next topic is weekly study routine and revision routine. What should be your weekly study routine or revision routine that never fails? Okay, see, this is what I did when I cleared all those 4 times when I was doing. I was sticking to this schedule, and this is precisely what I am trying to teach now. Okay, Monday to Saturday, if we talk our week in terms of days, For the first 6 days of the week, what we do is we study one topic per day of Laxmikanth, and then we revise it on the very next day through that active recall mode without looking at the notes or the books for that matter, jitna zyada ho sake. Okay, there has to be a 15-minute recap as from the very next day onwards. 1 3 7 15 day strategy I told you before. One PYQ set we must do, and when we are doing PYQ sets we must log the mistakes. See, so you know which areas to focus upon when you are revising next. आपको पता चलेगा कि पढ़ने के बावजूद कौन कौन से क्वेश्चन है जहां आप गलत हुए, कौन से ऑप्शंस में आप कंफ्यूज हुए, and if you log that in a particular book or in a particular at a particular place somewhere which you keep for your memory, then it will be very very easy for you to remember कि हाँ मैंने ये ऑप्शन गलत किया था, मुझे इस ऑप्शन को दोबारा से ढंग से देखना है. Okay. Then finally, the concept of 10-minute article mapping. See, check what is trending in the news, which article connects to that particular news article or Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha debate, or for that matter, news channel debate and so on. For example, अभी recently कुछ time पहले governor's assent थी, article 200 हो गया, reserving bills for the consideration of the president, or for that matter, क्या कहते हैं, द वक्फ बिल जो था वो अभी रिसेंटली न्यूज में था, वो किस तरह राइट ऑफ माइनॉरिटीज को हैम्पर करता है. ये जो इसके 25 to 29 के जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के आर्टिकल्स हैं उनसे वक्फ बिल किस तरह से कनेक्टेड है, एंड सो ऑन. दीज थिंग्स यू नीड टू मैप इन योर हेड. जब भी आप टॉपिक्स को पढ़ते हैं यू नीड टू फिगर आउट, अच्छा ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के किस पार्ट, किस शेड्यूल, किस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल प्रोविजन से कनेक्टेड है. इन दैट वेज यू विल बी रेडिली एबल टू कॉम्प्रिहेंसिवली एनालाइज के पूरे कॉन्सेप्ट या फिर पूरे टॉपिक में हो क्या रहा है. ओके, देन फाइनली ऑन संडे व्हाट वी डू इज वी टेक अ फुल लेंथ पॉलिटी मॉक टेस्ट. या तो जो सेक्शंस आपने कर लिए हैं उनका आप मॉक टेस्ट लेंगे, और इफ यू कंप्लीटेड योर एंटायर सिलेबस यू विल एवरी संडे टेक अ फुल लेंथ टेस्ट ऑफ योर एंटायर सिलेबस, सो दैट you know where you stand with respect to whatever you have studied. Okay, you need to make an error log with respect to the full length test and the errors you have committed while attempting it, so that again you can check the questions or the options which you performed wrong at, and then you can do according tweaks or improvements. Okay, then again another concept mapping for with respect to the tougher topics of the week. Every week the topics that you are going through, the ones which you find the most difficult to understand, or the topics where you spend maximum time, you need to make a mental concept, a mental framework of that topic, so that you can remember it deeply and understand it more deeply and more comprehensively when it comes to preparing for the examination. Right? देखिए, एक चीज आपको रिवीजन के रिस्पेक्ट में याद रखनी है अपनी स्ट्रैटेजी के लिए. मोस्ट एस्पायरेंट्स वेयर दे फेल इज दे रिवाइज जस्ट वंस. वो बहुत बड़ा ब्लंडर है. आई रिवाइज राइट अवे 3 times and I only know how immensely it helped. When I was doing the PYQs, my answer, the speed at which I could answer the questions, it came down from a good enough 1.5 minute to less than 10 seconds at time. कुछ questions एकदम sitting duck questions होते हैं, where if you know the provision, schedule or part of the constitution, it takes less than 5 seconds to even attempt that question. Okay. So next we come to mock test and elimination skills. See, mock tests are your lab. आपको जो भी guess work करना है, जो भी strategies लगानी है, जो भी attempt करने के तरीके लगाने हैं, you apply that during your mock test and you never ever try it into your actual examination. Okay, and perhaps mock test is the single most relevant factor in altering your prelims score. So you really should not ever ignore mock test. बहुत बहुत ज्यादा रेलिवेंट चीज है. आप कभी की सेलेक्टेड कैंडिडेट्स के इंटरव्यूज पढ़ेंगे, यू विल गेट टू नो दैट they all without say focus or talk about just one thing, go for mock test, and it is not just a rhetoric, they actually mean that thing. Okay, you need to attempt at least 30-40 high quality tests so that you can actually judge the depth of your understanding, and you don't aim to score, you need to actually analyze, and you analyze deeply. You need to make a clear error analysis for each wrong question. You need to see, was it lack of knowledge, was it a misreading of the question, or was that a poor elimination technique on your part, and so on. You need to create a mistake book with respect to your PYQs and mocks, so that you can log every wrong answer in it, and you can revisit every time you're doing your 3-day revision or weekly revision, and so on. Okay. Then while attempting mocks or PYQs, you need to follow certain elimination mantras. For example, extreme statements होते हैं, only हो गया, always हो गया, must हो गया. These are usually incorrect, so you can safely remove them. Like it says that when we are talking about elimination, let's say the union government has a power to always take control over state or state matters or matters in the state list. That statement, it talks about always, it is a far-fetched vision, far-fetched statement. It is usually wrong in this state or this state particular case. It's obviously wrong, but such examples are what you need to see. आप जब मॉक्स करेंगे तो आपको बहुत clearly examples दिखेंगे. Okay, then again, if there are two options and both are similar, then there is a very high likelihood that one of those options must be wrong. More often than not ये होता ही होता है. ठीक है. Then if you have a very factual, a high level of factual clarity, facts आपको clearly अगर याद है, that really helps you in quickly eliminating the wrong options with utter confidence. Okay, see, you don't need to mark answers on the basis of gut nahi lagani hai. You need to train your brain with logic, and moreover you need to treat every mock like an exam, but at the same time do not try to treat every result of your mock exam like a judgment day. आपको खुद को पनिश नहीं करना है, खुद को फ्रस्ट्रेट नहीं करना है if you're not scoring good. Believe me, it's a gradual process. With time your performance is bound to increase. Okay, next is the ultimate book list or the best resources to read the polity. See, you have to understand that you don't need 10 books. You need to study just 3 core books and 2 supplementary materials, and that's it. You don't really need to go beyond it. I've tried it multiple times. I've taken mains in state level examination. I've taken mains in judiciary. I've taken mains in UPSC and successfully cleared them. But I've seen this very source totally works in all those fields. Okay. So when you talk of core, first your class 11 and class 12 NCERT. Class 11 is important for understanding the basics, while class 12 is to understand and connect it with the historical connects as well as the applied aspects of the polity. Okay. Then Laxmikanth, latest edition. Obviously our current Bible for polity, if I may stretch it that far, and certainly a non-negotiable book. Very no fuss book and very, very relevant for your exam perspective. And then finally we have PM Bakshi, the Bayer Act, or rather Indian Constitution Bayer Act, written by Mr. PM Bakshi, to understand the actual articles word by word. Okay, that apart, we have to have 2 supplements. One is PYQs, last 10-year PYQs from 2015 to 2025. See, UPSC's mind is here, so you have to have them in your head. You have to study them. Okay, the next is current affairs, but only filtered for relevant policy developments. Major bills हैं, major amendments हैं, major judgments हैं, upcoming policies हैं, upcoming proposals for amendments हैं, and so on. You need to focus upon them. See, you don't need to waste your time chasing summaries on YouTube or PDFs without any context. You have to be very focused in your approach. आप 50 YouTube channels पे बैठ के देख रहे हैं, you are not going to be able to retain those topics. You are invariably going to fail. Okay, more resources are equal to more confusion, and in case of polity or prelims polity, the depth always wins over breadth in polity. Okay. Next is how do we read Laxmikanth strategically? See, most aspirants, as I told before, read it like a novel. They read it passively, endlessly, and in an ineffective manner. The solution here is that we read it actively. We need to have an active reading as well as layered revisions. आप topics को connect करिए कि कौन सा topics किस particular provision से connect हो रहा है, and then you try to read it simultaneously. Read the connected provisions also at the same time. कोई major judgments हैं SC के, वो आप connect करिए, and so on. I usually follow a 3-read structure when I'm studying Laxmikanth. See, when you do the first read of Laxmikanth, you don't do too much fuss about it. You understand the structure of the topics as well as the chapters. हर chapter के अंदर क्या क्या topics हैं, वो क्यों connected हैं, कैसे एक वो holistic whole बना रहे हैं, and so on. Okay, you don't really need to focus too much upon memorizing the titles or articles for that matter. You just need to understand the structure here. When you come to second read, that is when you go for the depth. You understand articles, you try to mug the articles, remember them, you try to understand the meaning of the provision, you highlight the keywords, you try to look at the various dimensions and connect those dimensions, have an in-depth understanding of the topic, and make a list of major parts, schedule, articles, and so on. And then finally the third reading onwards, you only revise the part that has been highlighted. So you have limited data to revise, and at the same time you can quickly revise that thing. Okay. Then there are certain key focus areas. जैसे पहले भी मैंने आपको topic wise strategy बोली, and here also I'm saying there are certain key areas which you must totally stress upon both at the time of your first read as well as the time of second and third read. आपका प्रीएम्बल हो गया, फंडामेंटल राइट्स हैं, डीपीएसपीज हैं, इमरजेंसीज हैं, पार्लियामेंट ऑफ यूनियन एंड स्टेट लेजिस्लेचर, यूनियन एंड स्टेट एग्जीक्यूटिव हो गई, इनकी फंक्शनैलिटीज हो गई, पावर्स हो गई, मनी बिल्स हो गए, या फिर जुडिशरी है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट, हाई कोर्ट हो गए, देयर अपॉइंटमेंट स्ट्रक्चर फंक्शनिंग हो गई, मेजर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडीज हैं, मेजर स्टैट्यूटरी बॉडीज हैं, एंड सो ऑन. These areas are very very relevant for the purposes of study as well as revision for your examination. Okay, then it comes to decoding previous year questions. See, देखिए, if we क्या कहते हैं, if we look at the various trends with respect to previous year questions, we can make certain generalizations. Mostly, the PYQs are either article based or some part based or some schedule based questions. Then at times they are judgment based. They ask you a question and they want you to connect it to a particular judgment, or they deal with the structural or functional understanding. या तो static part को पूछ रहा है या फिर आपको functional aspects को पूछ रहा है. Okay, then टर्म्स लाइक कलीजियम हो गया, बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर हो गया, ऑर्डिनेंस हो गया, दे यूजुअली कीप रेकरिंग इन योर पीवाईक्यूज. ओके, अब हम इसकी अगर एक्शन प्लान्स की बात करें तो सी व्हाट वी यूजुअली नीड टू डू इज, फर्स्ट यू नीड टू सॉल्व last 10 if not more, at least last 10 year questions. You need to solve them topic wise so you have in-depth understanding. You need to make your log of errors, you need to make a log of mistakes. Then you need to focus on the trends. कौन से क्वेश्चन ज्यादा आ रहे हैं, कौन से क्वेश्चन कम आ रहे हैं. सो अकॉर्डिंगली you can figure out कि भाई कौन सा एरियाज यूपीएससी के लिए ज्यादा रेलिवेंट है, कौन से एरियाज को क्वाइटली वो स्किप कर दे रहा है. दैट इज रियली गोइंग टू हेल्प यू. ओके, सी आई हैव टेकन अ क्वेश्चन हियर. 2024 का क्वेश्चन है, द 71st अमेंडमेंट ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अमेंड्स द 8th शेड्यूल टू इंक्लूड विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग लैंग्वेजेस? Konkani, Manipuri, Nepali and Maithili. Now if we look at 71st constitutional amendment, it included Konkani, Manipuri and Nepali. These three languages were part of the 71st amendment. Maithili on the other hand was added along with Bodo, Maithili, संथली एंड सो ऑन बाय द 92nd कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट एक्ट. तो अगर आपको कोंकणी, मणिपुरी, नेपाली याद है, इफ यू रिमेंबर दैट पर्टिकुलर 71st अमेंडमेंट एक्ट, you can in less than 5 seconds attempt this question and get done with it, right? In this particular case, 1, 2, 3, option A is the correct answer. Can you gauge the speed at which I have taken this answer, right? Okay, next is conceptual clarity versus memory. See, you need to understand the topics before you memorize. Don't just memorize articles. You need to understand their purpose and their relevance. For example, Article 14 की अगर हम बात करें, it's not just about equality before law. It's the philosophical foundation of the Indian democracy itself. ठीक है ना? Then you need to use real world analogies. जैसे preamble है, you need to think of it like the opening credits of a movie, or for that matter DPSPs हैं. They are like the wish lists that are expected out of a state or expected from a state to perform. Fundamental duties है, they are like a citizen code of conduct. आपको mnemonics को use करना है. जैसे आप parts की बात करते हैं, tears of an old PM can be used to remember the parts of our constitution. Similarly, you need to apply what if questions. आप किसी टॉपिक को याद कर रहे हैं तो उसको समझ रहे हैं या याद कर रहे हैं तो आपको what if एनालॉजीज लगानी चाहिए. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, what if the parliament violates fundamental right? अगर पार्लियामेंट किसी फंडामेंटल को वायलेट कर देती है तो क्या होगा? अपने दिमाग को अप्लाई करके देखिए, इट विल हेल्प इंप्रूव योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ दैट टॉपिक. या फिर व्हाट इफ द सेंटर टेक्स ओवर अ स्टेट? उस सिचुएशन में कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन क्या प्रोविजंस दे रहा है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट कैसे पिक्चर में आ रही है, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडीज कोई हो जो इस पिक्चर में आ जाएंगी, एंड सो ऑन. That is how you make your content exam proof. Okay. Next is how do you integrate current affairs into your polity preparation. Polity questions, they often have a current trigger but test a static concept. क्वेश्चन देखने में सिर्फ करंट बेस लगेगा पर अंडरलाइन कंसेप्ट जो होगा कोई ना कोई स्टैटिक कंसेप्ट होगा. इफ यू डू हैव अ नॉलेज ऑफ दैट स्टैटिक कंसेप्ट, यू कैन इजीली सॉल्व दैट क्वेश्चन. ओके, तो यहां पे स्ट्रैटेजी क्या होती है? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, यू नीड टू मेंटेन अ पॉलिटी फ्रॉम करंट अफेयर्स का नोटबुक. बहुत रेलिवेंट है कि जो भी पॉलिटी रिलेटेड करंट अफेयर्स है उनको आप एक जगह पेन डाउन करके रखें. देन यू नीड टू ट्रैक मेजर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट्स जो न्यूज में रहे हैं, कोई बिल्स इंट्रोड्यूस हुए हैं, कोई रूलिंग्स आई हैं, कैबिनेट के मेजर डिसीजंस हैं, कोई पॉलिसीज न्यूली ले डाउन करी गई हैं, एंड सो ऑन. मंथली करंट अफेयर्स जो आपकी मैगजीन्स आती हैं या फिर न्यूज़पेपर के बेसिस पे आप जो नोट्स बना रहे हैं उनको फिल्टर आउट करिए पॉलिटी के पर्सपेक्टिव से, एंड देन कीप इट इन अ सेपरेट प्लेस. ठीक है, जैसे आर्टिकल 21 है, अब आपने यूआईएडीआई या फिर आधार रिलेटेड डेटा प्रोटेक्शन बिल के ऊपर आप बात करेंगे, उसको आर्टिकल 21 राइट टू लाइफ, राइट टू प्रिवेसी एज अ पार्ट ऑफ राइट टू लाइफ, उससे कनेक्ट करिए. या फिर आर्टिकल 200 है, गवर्नर जो अपनी असेंट देता है उसको डिले करता है तो उसको आप कैसे आर्टिकल 200 से कनेक्ट करेंगे. 239AA को दिल्ली ऑर्डिनेंस से आप कैसे कनेक्ट करेंगे, एंड सो ऑन. सी, यू नीड टू connect these current related events to the static Laxmikanth topics to have a overall holistic understanding. Then you need to understand one thing, common mistakes. I talked it at the beginning of my lecture also, and now again I'm repeating it. You need to understand the common mistakes which most aspirants make, and you really must not do it. See, reading 3 books instead of mastering one, a very simple mistake, and so many, believe me, so many students fall for this trap. Too much data is never useful. Go for limited data. Try to revise it multiple times. Skipping PYQs or solving without diagnosis. You either don't solve the PYQs, you take them lightly, or when you are solving them, you go for them routinely. आपका पेपर खत्म हुआ, आपने उठा के पेपर को फेंक दिया. That is not going to help, my dear. You need to analyze the options, you need to analyze the questions, and you need to see where did you go wrong. Going for YouTube summaries without self-testing. देखिए, आप बस जैसे अभी मेरा लेक्चर सुन रहे हैं, अगर आप कोई क्लास सुन रहे हैं और रैंडमली एक के बाद एक कई सारी क्लासेस सुन रहे हैं, दैट इज नॉट गोइंग टू हेल्प यू एट ऑल. यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड कि टॉपिक क्या कह रहा है. यू नीड टू स्टडी इट योरसेल्फ. देन यू, इफ एट ऑल यू वांट, यू थिंक देयर इज अ नीड, you need to go for YouTube summaries. And most importantly, you need to go for a self analysis and self testing to check regularly how much have you actually absorbed with respect to that topic. Okay, then very important thing, making notes from toppers but not your own. Very, very relevant thing. So many of us do that. You need to study the topics. You need to make your own bullet points. You need to make your own paragraphs. You need to make your own mental maps. You need to make your own flow charts if you actually want to have a deeper understanding of the topic. Otherwise, believe me, after a span of time, you are bound to forget the topics. Important do's if we talk about PYQs. Treat PYQs as your syllabus. It is very, very relevant. If you can study PYQs and analyze them deeply, you are going to realize कि PYQs अपने आप में इतने ज्यादा relevant है कि अगर आप PYQs को ही ढंग से कर लें तो वो ही आपका पूरा syllabus cover करवा देते हैं. Use active recall over passive reading. I told you before also, in case, instead of going for a strategy wherein you are just reading again and again, you need to do a recall wherein you put the book down and you try to recollect whatever you have remembered with respect to that topic. Final takeaways if we talk about polity. Polity, it's like a pattern. If you crack the pattern, you crack the prelims. Okay, you need to focus on one book, not 5 books. You need to treat PYQs as your syllabus. You need to link your current affairs with your articles, and you need to master as well as train yourself in elimination, not just memory. In conclusion, I'll speak the major 3 pillars that I laid down. You need to understand the concept and the intent behind the articles. You need to retain them daily as well as weekly through maps, revision maps, flowcharts, and so on. And then finally, you need to apply those ideas or understanding through PYQs, mocks, elimination drills, and so on. See, if you have any doubt with respect to whatever I've taught you here, you can put it down in the comment section. And I request you to please like, subscribe my video, and share whatever views you have to share with respect to this video, so that I can make necessary tweaks and amendments in my video in the next time, and I can also take the views and questions and doubts that you have while taking my lecture out here. Okay. Please understand this strategy. It has worked with me, and I'm very, very sure if you diligently and honestly follow this strategy, it is without fail going to be working for you. Okay, I would be putting up this entire lecture in a PDF form so that you can download it at the end of the lecture, and you can keep it with you for a perpetual memory and use the important pointers given in this particular PDF. And while you prepare for the examination, do please take help of them. All right.